Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to week 6 of 8 of our team leader development training call, as well as our 2025 director search. We're super excited to have you on. And first and foremost, for me, I'm like, wow, we're already at week 6, right? There's only 3 trainings left. And depending on how this is received, maybe I'll just make this a consistent thing. And then every Sunday we'll talk and dive into a different topic of the business. But today's topic is all about sorting and developing leaders. And all roads have kind of led us to here, right? Week 1, we talked about creating your change your face, change your finances story, the power of becoming a product of the product, and more importantly, setting those benchmarks to help you achieve those financial results that can lead to so much more, right? Then we talked about passion, defining difference, how at the end of the day, it's your attitude, not your aptitude, determines your altitude, right? It's not always the information that you know, it's your excitement, your passion that you bring into your action that determines your results. When it comes to inviting, one of the things I've learned is you can't say the right thing to the wrong person and you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And when you're excited, what happens? When you know where you're going, people will be afraid not to follow you. Then we dived into the power of relationships and how that's the glue to the business, how people quit on businesses, but they do not quit on friends and family, and how you want to build that tight knit culture and community and organization where your team is more like family. And then we talked about different avenues of the business as well. We talked about what makes a 10-point leader, all the different qualities that a leader has, right, to be a well-rounded leader. And so today we're going to take that another step forward, and we're going to talk about how everything rises and falls on leadership. Because one of the biggest things that we want is we want to attract leaders, right? But how do we identify them? How do we sort for them? How do we recruit them? This is that training. So today's topic is super, super simple. We're going to go over a couple things, right? Number one, how to identify a leader. Because if you want to recruit a leader, you have to know what a leader looks like. So when you spot a leader, you're like, oh, there's a leader, right? Then you want to talk about why you want a leader. We're going to talk about how to attract a leader, how to bring them into your business. And then last but not least, how to enroll a leader, okay? So let's talk about how to identify a leader. Well, again, in order for us to recruit leaders, we have to know what a leader looks like. Well, what does a leader in Remon look like? Well, a leader at Remon is able to do a few things, right? They're able to do presentations. They know how to present the opportunity, both formal and informal, right? There's 2 different types of presentations. There's a formal presentation, that's like a PowerPoint, that's like Zoom, that's like having all the products. Then there's the informal presentations, and the informal presentations is through a conversation, maybe a 3-way call. Maybe this person has a little bit more experience, right? So you tailor it to them. Leaders in Remon are also able to do trainings, right? They know how to launch people correctly in the business. And don't worry, that's going to be the next topic, right? But they know how to launch people correctly. They know how to get people started. And more importantly, they know how to duplicate through the systems that we have, right? Leaders are able to maintain a good attitude in front of problems and obstacles, right? And not only that, but they have a good perspective when it comes to problems and obstacles, right? They look at challenges as an opportunity to learn and grow and to get better versus, right, people that have a bad attitude that are not leaders. They look at problems and challenges as reasons to quit, as reasons to feel defeated and to be negative, right? And the most important skill, I believe, that a Remon leader has, and probably the best skill you can learn in the beginning, is how to promote events. Local, regional, international. Zooms are events, right? The orientation calls we have, the overview calls, the Friday training calls that we have with Team 1%, these Sunday calls. And let me share with you, learning how to promote events effectively is probably the best skill. And I'll tell you why. You can actually make 6 figures in this business without doing one single presentation. Now, if you learn how to do a presentation, you learn how to do orientations, you're going to make that faster. But you can actually make money, 6 figures in this industry. I can give you examples of so many people without doing a single presentation, without doing a single orientation. Why? Because they're so good at getting people in front of their uplines. They're so good at getting people in front of the professionals. They leverage every single call, they leverage every single event, and they let the professionals go to work for them, which is huge, okay? So let's talk about it. Leaders are, right? Leaders, at the end of the day, they're hungry for success. They want it, right? It's almost like, a breath of air, right? And what do I mean by that? There's a great story way back when of Socrates, right? And Socrates is known as one of the greatest teachers in the world, right? Of philosophy. And people would seek him out. They would want him to mentor him. They would want him to teach him. And one day, this person came to his door, knocked on his door, and says, "Are you Socrates?" And he goes, "Yes." He goes, "I want to be your student. I want to learn from you." And Socrates says, "I'm not taking any students." The person leaves. The next day, He shows up again. He's hungry. He wants it. He's not going to accept no as an answer. He says a no is no, not right now. No, not yet. He shows up the next day. Same time, knocks on the door. Socrates opens the door, says, "Hey, weren't you here yesterday?" And he goes, "Yeah, but I want to be your student. I want to learn from you." And Socrates says, "I'm not taking any students," closes the door. And this process repeats for several days. And about a couple of days later, he shows up. And before he can knock on the door, Socrates was already anticipating, already knew he was going to show up, open the door, and says, "Do you want to be my student?" And the gentleman says, "Yes." He goes, "Follow me." And he takes him all the way down to the river. And as they go down to the river, he says, "Why are we here?" He says, "I want to teach you your first lesson." And as they go into the water now starts up and it's now up to their waist, goes up pretty far into the middle, where now it's up to his chest. And he goes, "How bad do you want it?" And the student says, "More than anything." And Socrates grabs his head, dunks him underwater, holds him underwater with so much strength. The person fights, comes out of the water, gasps for air. He goes, "How bad do you want it?" And he goes, "I want it bad." Dunks his head even harder, right? With all his strength, Socrates is holding him down to the point where he almost drowns. And with all the strength he has, he fights through, right? Breathing, huffing for air, gasping for air, like it's the first time he's breathed. And he looked at Socrates, goes, "Socrates, what are you doing? You almost killed me." And Socrates looks back at him and he says, "Until you want knowledge as bad as you want to breathe, you'll never have it." And I look at success the same way. You got to be hungry for success. In fact, you need to want it more than your uplines want it for you. In fact, that's one of the metrics I use on how I gauge whether I'm going to work with somebody individually or work with them as a group, right? Because certain people are not ready yet. We look for people that have a work ethic, desire, and are coachable. But more importantly, the biggest deciding factor is this: it's not potential, because everybody has potential, right? But what I look at is if you look in terms of ratio, okay, if I want it for you 50, if it's 100%, and I want it for you 51%, and you want it for you 49%, as in I want it more for you than you want it for you, I'm not going to work with you as an individual just yet until you want it for yourself, until you're that hungry. But if I find somebody that wants it for them 51%, I want them for 49%, which means they want it more for them than I want it for them, that's a good benchmark of the person I'm going to invest my time to work with and develop, right? Number two, they're thirsty for knowledge. And this is huge. And yes, in the very beginning, you want to leverage your upline. You want to rely on your upline, right? Because you don't know how to do everything yet. You want to learn how to do the presentations. You want to learn how to do the launches. But the difference is this, right? The people that become the best leaders, when there's an issue, right? If they don't know how to set up an e-wallet, for example, something small like setting up an e-wallet, or something as, looking for the presentation so they can study, the orientations, the replays. Most people in the very beginning, they just message their upline, "Hey, where can I find the presentation? Where can I find the training? How do I set up the e-wallet?" But people that are thirsty for knowledge, here's what they do. They go look for the information first. They go, "Let me go into Remon and let me look through the back office so I can study it, and let me find out where the resources are." Right? Let me explore Remon on the drive and see where all those things are. Oh, that's where the presentation is. That's where the orientation is. That's where the marketing material is, right? So they're thirsty for knowledge. They're not waiting for you to tell them what to do. They're not waiting for you to teach them what to do, right? They're proactively going out there, learning what to do, and more importantly, asking what to do. And also on a higher level, asking you what to do next. Right? They have that self-starter mentality, that self-motivation mentality. They're not waiting for someone to come in and flip that switch. That switch is already flipped on, right? And they're actively going out there looking for it. The third thing is leaders attend events. They understand the power of events. They understand the more they are around Remon, the more they're going to understand the lyrics, right? The more they're going to understand the business. Because there's two ways to learn. One, doing it yourself, or number two, watching somebody else do it. And the beauty of attending events is you get to watch other people do it. And the powerful thing about the mind is this: when you watch somebody else do it, you're actually downloading that information in your mind. And as you watch them do it, it's almost as if you're doing it and you're remembering it and you're learning it. Think of things in terms of when you read a novel or a book, right? A lot of times you read a novel or a book, a fiction book, and they're describing what's happening, right? You know, you're lost in the jungle, right? The main character has his machete, chopping through the trees and the vines, carving a path, looking for the way out into the jungle to find this hidden temple where all the gold is stored. As they're describing it, you're imagining yourself there. You're imagining yourself as the main character. You're imagining yourself as if you were the one chopping the machete, right? That also works for biography books, right? And that's why a lot of successful people, they read official biographies of the people they look up to, people that have become successful, people that are titans of industry. And why is that? Because as they read the books and read their story, read their life, it's almost as if they're going through it themselves. And what happens is they're gaining that experience without going through that process, right? And what I like to describe it as, you are upgrading your software without damaging your hardware, right? And that's actually something I get from fighting. That's why we learn drills. That's why we do partner drills. That's why we do technical sparring, right? We're not trying to knock each other out. We're not trying to hurt the other person, right? It's an opportunity, right, to slow it down and try real techniques in real world situations in a controlled environment. And again, what does that allow you to do? Upgrade your software, your ability to process, react, and respond without damaging your hardware. So no one's getting concussions, no one's getting hurt. And when you attend events, it's very, very similar, because what's happening is you're learning from the people that have already done it, the people that have come before you. And what happens is their hindsight becomes your foresight, their ability to let you know, this is what I've been through. This is what works and this doesn't work. And as you get through that, guess what? You don't have to learn that the hard way through trial and error. You essentially shortcut it by taking all the things that they did that worked, duplicating that, taking all the things they did that didn't work, and avoiding that. And that's why events are so important, because that's where you get a chance to hear people's different opinions. You get a chance to hear their experiences and their stories, and it becomes almost as your own, right? The next thing that leaders are is they have exceptional work ethic. They understand that anything worth having in life is worth working hard for. And nothing, right, that's worthwhile is going to come easy. Now, I know for some people, you see people get involved and it's like it was so easy for them and they just become successful so fast. I want to share with you, don't fall into that trap of comparison. Number one, comparison's a thief of joy, right? Number two, chances are they paid that price somewhere else, which means they learned the skills and techniques somewhere else. They gained the experience of developing a network somewhere else or influence somewhere else, that when they got started in Remon, because they paid that price there, it almost seems like they had success overnight, when in reality, it happened night after night after night before they got involved into Remon. But they put in that work ethic, right? And again, you hear me say this a lot, but the only place success comes before work is in the dictionary. You have to work for it, right? Next is leaders, right? They have influence with people, right? They have influence with people. You know, they say in the beginning, there's three phases of making, there's three things, right? Number one, you make money, right, for what you do. The second level is you make money for what you know. The third is you make money because of who you are. And that's a magical place to get to, because when you're making money because of who you are, that means you have influence with people. Now, how do you gain influence with people? Become a person of value, a person that gives more than they take, right? You're giving value, you're pouring into people. Okay. And that's how you build influence. You're building genuine relationships. You're connecting with them, finding out what their stories are, right? Next, leaders are coachable. And that's the best part. All the best masters were once students, but I'll take it a step further. All great masters stay great students, right? They're coachable. They're always willing to learn, and especially from people that have already made it and have already got there, right? Can you imagine how silly it would be as a boxer? You know, I get a chance to train with Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson says, "Hey, I would throw a punch like this." And you're just like, "No, Mike, I have my own way of throwing it." It wouldn't make sense. Or you want to be a world-class piano player, and in your first class, your teacher's teaching you, you're like, "I don't want to play like that. I want to play like that." Right? You're not going to get very, very far. And I want to share with you that this business, if you've never succeeded in this industry before, it doesn't matter if you succeed in other industries. It's different. You have to learn how this works the same way you had to learn how your business works in the other areas. Okay. Another step is leaders handle and solve problems quickly. Okay. They handle and solve problems quickly. And again, we get paid based on the value we bring to the marketplace. We are professional problem solvers. And some of the things that you're going to learn as you become a leader in this business, you're going to become a professional firefighter. What does that mean? You're going to be putting out fires, right? Because people, right? This business is a business of people. People have fears, doubts, different things come up. They have different thresholds of what they can take, right? And again, you heard me say this on our earlier call. Most people quit not because they thought it was going to be hard, but because they thought it was going to be easy. Challenges are part of the game. It's a challenge to succeed. If it were not, more people would be successful, right? For every one person enjoying the fruit from the tree of success, thousands are mystified and perplexed for what seems to be some type of elusive secret for, if success was to be achieved, right? They're examining the roots, right? Instead of picking the fruits, right? So what does that mean, right? It's a challenge. Accept it. It's part of the game. But not just that, but challenges is what makes you better. It's what makes you skilled, right? It's what makes you qualified. And at the end of the day, people want to follow people that are competent, right? They know how to solve problems and they do it quickly, okay? Now, what do leaders do? Right? Leaders are constantly developing themselves. They understand the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, which stands for never ending improvement, right? Guess what? You can always be better. You can always be more skilled. And again, the better you get, the more skilled you are, right? The more money you're going to make. And eventually, you're going to be so skilled, right? You're going to be so experienced that people are just going to pay you money and people are going to join simply because of your name, who you are, what you've done for others and how you show up. Okay. So you got to constantly develop yourself. You got to constantly work on yourself. The biggest thing that Mr. Tim Hirsch shared with me the first time I met him, it changed my life forever. It's what made me fall in love with personal development. It's what helped me get out of my trap of believing all the labels I accepted as having autism. It helped me move past all the labels I've accepted of having ADHD, right? He said, Julian, if you could have everything you want the way you are, you should already have it. So if you want more, you got to become more. And then I remember him sharing that. I was like, wow, that's so powerful. I've never learned this in school. No one's ever told me this before. They always told me that's just the way you are. That's just the way it is. And it was so counterintuitive, but it made so much sense logically that my autism accepted it. And I said, okay, so it doesn't matter how bad I am. It doesn't matter if I'm bad at learning, right? Even if that were true, it doesn't mean I shouldn't do it, right? And if I do it and I work hard on it on a long enough time frame, guess what? I'm going to become really good at this. And so I fell in love with the power of personal development, right? And I realized again something Mr. Danny Bay said. He said, Julian, if everything you need to say or do to become successful, someone's already said it, someone's already done it. All you have to do is find those people, do what they do, say what they say, and you'll have what they have. How to get good at presentations. I found the presentations I related to, and I wrote it down. I would listen to it on my car. I turned my car into a mobile classroom. I would listen to the presentations over and over again to learn how to do it, right? To recite the words, almost like a lyrics to a song. And then once I got that down, I changed it to my own words, and then I started practicing it, right? So again, as leaders, they're constantly developing themselves. Leaders have passion and they have intensity, right? They have passion, they have intensity, right? We talked about this, on week 2, passion defining difference, the defining difference, right? It's all about action, not apathy. Most people are apathetic. They're just cruising through life, just taking, whatever comes their way. But then leaders, they have passion, intensity. They say life doesn't happen to me. Life happens because of me. I create life. I create my results. Okay. And on top of that, leaders finish strong, right? They turn their shoulds into musts. And that's probably one of the biggest things too. We all know what we should do. We all know what we should get better at. We all know what we should be practicing. But the problem is, right? Most people are just spending so much time shooting all over themselves. But the real leaders, they understand. They turn their shoulds into musts. Why? Because we don't always do what we should do. We always do what we must do, right? Leaders also have written commitments. They know exactly what they want. It's clearly defined. Now, here's what's interesting. They did a study, and some of you who've been on Tim Hurst's presentation, you saw it live. He broke it down, right? They did a study of 100 college graduates from the age of 25. They tracked them age 65 when they're supposed to retire, right? 1%, right? 1 out of 100 became wealthy. Wealthy defined by the U.S. government is having a net worth of $2 million and above. 4% became financially independent, and that means having a net worth of $100,000 to $2 million. Okay, 5% are still working. 5%, right, are still working by the age of 65. Okay, still working. 54%, right, are 36% are dead, and then 54% are dead broke. Isn't that crazy? Right? And now here's what's interesting. What's the difference between the 1% and the 4%? What they've noticed is the 4% knew what they want, right? The 1% not only knew what they want, but they had it written down and they surrounded themselves with images of it, pictures of it. They surround their environment with it. It's like osmosis, right? You know the saying, out of sight, out of mind. They took it the opposite direction, right? In sight, in mind. And that's all they were focused on. They put it around them. They wrote their goals on their mirror, right? Of what rank they wanted to hit, what position they wanted to achieve. They had, vision boards. Those are all different things that represent the same thing, right? The written commitments that they surround themselves with, right? And not only that, but what do leaders do? They place their planner's success ahead of their own. And I think that's so huge. And you heard me talk about how relationships is the glue. When you do things only for yourself, that's who you get left with. But when you do things for people, that's who you're going to be joined with. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, you have to place your planner's success ahead of your own. And Zig Ziglar said it best. He said, if you help enough people get what they want, you will automatically get what you want. And that's so huge. What if we shifted the focus? And you heard me talk about this in the Change Your Face, Change Your Finances training, which is week 1, right? Shifting your focus, right? If you want to become a team leader, instead of focusing on the 50,000 BP, focus on promoting 10 managers. Managers is the manager is the first earned position, right? Number one, it's within reach. People believe they have the highest level belief that they can hit that position, right? They're going to run harder for their goals and your goals. And if you help 10 people do that, guess what? The numbers work out where you'll become a team leader. Now, if you want to become a director, how do you become a director? Focus on developing 30 managers. Why? Because if you help 30 people become managers, the numbers work out where you're going to become a director. Let me ask you a question. Do you think your team cares more about them rank advancing or you rank advancing? Now, I know that your friends or your family, they want you to have success. They want you to get promoted. But I think it's safe to say that everybody's tuned in to their favorite radio station, WIFM, right? WIIFM. What's in it for me, right? I brain farted, right? They're all tuned into their favorite radio station, which is what's in it for me. So again, they're more likely to be motivated to become a director than you become a director. Because it's just good for you, right? But if you help 60 people do that, you're a director. And here's what's amazing. Do you want to be a senior director, right? No, 30 directors. I mean, 30 managers becomes a director. If you want to become senior director, that's 60 managers. Okay, you already did half 30. It's another 30, right? Now, if you want to become a senior director, right? That's 60 managers. If you want to become a national director, that's 120 managers in your organization. Again, the best leaders place their planner of success ahead of their own. So when you focus on your team getting promoted, guess what? The volume will take care of itself and the rank advances will take care of itself. Okay. So how do you attract a leader, right? This is the fun part. Well, how do you attract a leader? Well, you must be the leader you want to attract, right? So many of us, we go, oh, I know this networker that makes millions. I'm going to share with you the harsh reality, okay? The products are really good. They're great. They're the best products in the marketplace. The rewards program is great. But at the end of the day, what decides whether someone joins you or not? They have to know, like, or trust you. Now, chances are, if they've made more money and have more success than you, if you have a close enough relationship, they'll take a look at the information, but you have to connect them with someone of a higher rank than you and them, someone that's earned more than you and them. Because in this industry, there is a little bit of an ego. And a lot of times, right, if the relationship's not as strong, most people do not want to work with people or signed up under someone that they've done better than. And that's just the reality, okay? And it's kind of negative, but that's just kind of the truth. Because imagine if you've earned millions of dollars, would you want to sign up under somebody that hasn't earned anything yet? And so a lot of times people when they get started, like, oh, if I could just get that one person that, already has his team built, bring them over here, I'm going to succeed. Yes, that's true. But what's the likelihood that person's going to join, right? So let me share with you something. What's easier and more rewarding than signing up leaders, right? It's to become the leader. Becoming the leader is a lot easier than finding the leader. And as you become the leader, guess what? You'll be able to attract those leaders. So again, right, when you become that leader, whatever level of leadership that you are at, guess what? It's going to be easy for you to track the people at the same level or below as you. So the higher you move up as a leader, the more people that you're going to have influence over and the more people you can attract. So it's always easier to work on yourself than pray for a gift from the universe to come down, right? So again, how do you become the leader you want to attract? Well, you got to ask yourself, number one, do you set an example for your team? And number two, what kind of example do you set for your team? And if your team was as hungry for success as you, thirsty as knowledge for you, if they attended the same amount of events as you, how much money would you make? And that's usually a big indication because people follow your example more than your opinion. Okay. Number two, do you dress professionally? Okay. Now, again, when I say professionally, here's what I mean. Do you dress proportionately to the event that you're hosting, right? If it's a casual conversation, XYZ doesn't really matter. But if you notice, right, we dress differently depending on the level of the Zoom or event that we attend. And the reason why, because again, people judge a book by its cover. You have to look the part. When people see you, can they tell that you're enthusiastic as hell? Can they tell that you're sharp as a tack? And number three, can they tell that you are competent? Now, in the very beginning, before you have that success, the more professionally you dress, the lot easier it will be. Why? Because people will address you. You want to dress how you want to be addressed. That's what my mentor taught me in the beginning. But once you built yourself, you have the money, you have the name, you have all that, then you can dress however you want, right? But most of us are not there yet. But also when you dress professionally, what ends up happening, it lets them know that you're taking it seriously, right? So I have a little Remont jacket, right? Really cool. I got this from the director trip. That's a low key flex. Hit director so you can go there. They give you a lot of cool merch, right? So again, having Remont swag is another great way to dress when you're doing Zooms, right? If you like to be more casual, okay? Ask yourself, do you speak with confidence? That's huge, right? Language creates the world, right? The word creates the world. Language, the words that you speak privately and publicly, and how you speak them shapes your reality. So when you're talking to your team, do you show up as competent? Do you show up as confident, right? And again, you don't have to know everything. People go, well, Julian, I don't know everything yet. How can I be confident? Well, let me ask you a question. Do you know where to get that information? And if you don't know where to get that information, do you know who you can talk to get that information? If the answer is yes, then you have every reason to be confident, right? Leaders don't have to know everything. A lot of times in the very beginning, someone would ask me a question, and you know what I would say? I would say, that's a great question. I don't know, but let me find out for you and get back to you. It's huge. And you can say that with confidence and it works every single time. Just make sure you get that information, you get back to them, okay? And then the next thing is, do you speak with conviction? And that's huge because it goes back to what I shared with you earlier, is that when you know where you're going, people will be afraid not to follow you. Fear of missing out. When you know where you're going, people are afraid not to follow you. And this is something that I casually touch on, but I never really straight out said it, but I'll say it. When I was introduced to Remon, as you know my story, I was settled in my career. I didn't want to get back in network marketing. My disempowering belief was I knew how hard it was to climb the mountain. Was I really ready to climb the mountain again? Do I really want to climb that mountain again? Right? I had all these different thoughts and beliefs, but I got started because Tim, her, and Chris Kim left the business that they built for 14 years. They brought $1 billion in sales. I mean, these are two gentlemen that the last time I worked with them, changed my life forever, taught me the skills, right? And it helped me develop my talent. Where when I left the industry, I became successful in fitness. I became successful in consulting. I became successful in seminars because of what they taught me. And so when they showed me Remont, I got started because I was scared of missing out. I was like, I know whatever Tim and Chris do, they make a lot of money. And I know when they first get involved, they're going to hit it hard, right? And the best part about them hitting it hard is, my parents, they like to cycle, so they bike. Or, if you guys are familiar with cycling or you're familiar with Formula One, I love Formula One as well. There's a term called drafting. Okay. Now the leader, it's a tough job, right? Why? Because when you're cycling, you're cutting through you're cutting through the wind resistance. The wind's hitting you, right? Same thing with F1, right? You're driving these race cars, the wind's hitting you. But there's a technique called drafting where you go behind the lead car. They're getting all the wind resistance, pushing the car back, so the car has to work harder to go at that speed. But because you're behind them, it works in cycling too. You're behind them, they cut all the wind resistance, so your car doesn't have to work as hard to go as fast. And when you do it correctly, you can slingshot and move past them. You're using their momentum, right, to build your momentum. And again, in the very beginning, I understood that. So that's why I got started. I said, man, if I could just draft them, ride behind them, build this business, I can make some extra money. I didn't think I would be hitting director. I didn't think it would add a multiple six-figure income into my household, but it was something that I'm so glad that I did, right? So again, when you have confidence and conviction, people are afraid not to follow you. And the amount of confidence and conviction that Tim and Chris had that this was it, when they talked to me about it, I was just like, I know I can do it. Do I want to do it? I don't know. But man, I know for a fact they're going to do it. So at least let me get positioned, right? And so that's how I got started. So again, you could set up the same thing. Now, how to attract the leader. If you want to attract a leader, you have to understand something called the law of the lid, right? There's a really great book out there for leadership. If you want to become a better leader, there's a book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell, who was one of my mentors. I got a chance to speak on stage with him. He's the most sought after, most sought after expert on leadership. He has so many great books, right? The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership is number one. I recommend that for everybody. Number two is the 5 levels of leadership, right? That's the second one I recommend. Huge, really great book, right? On leadership. And he's also a Christian-based leader. I know some people, that's a big deal. And so you know where his fundamentals and his come from is, right? So law number one is law of the lid, right? And what does that mean? The level of effectiveness of the organization, right, can only rise as high as the lid of the leader. Leader sets the lid. So the more you raise the lid, the further you can go. And that's all based on leadership, right? And so what that comes down to is this: you can only attract people with the same level of commitment and growth that you have. Let me say it again. You can only attract people with the same level of commitment and growth you have. So grow as a leader, right? To attract other leaders to your business. So again, you can only attract people with the same level of commitment and growth you have. So if you grow your level of commitment and growth, you're going to attract people with that same level of commitment. Okay, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. So again, your work ethic will succeed where your talent fails you. Okay, let me say it again. Your work ethic will succeed when your talent fails you. Talent is not enough. I've seen it over and over again, and I'm pretty sure every single one of you in this call can look at different industries that you're familiar with and you can see it, right? And what do I mean by that? Not everybody at the top is the best, and not everybody that's the best is at the top. And what does that mean? There are great people that have a lot of talent. They can be considered the best, but when it comes to accolades, championships, awards, guess what? They will get beaten every single day by someone that works harder than them, right? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I'm telling you, I've never seen a person that shows up every single day, does everything they're supposed to do, does it with a level of intensity and passion and commitment to growth, right? Fail. I've never seen it. And I'm telling you, it's going to pay off, right? So you got to grow your commitment, right? And more importantly, you got to grow as a leader, okay? And that's going to come down to your work ethic, putting in that work, okay? Now, you also have to understand the law of process. Everything is a process, right? You listen, you learn, you lead, right? Again, when we hear, right, we listen to the calls, we get on the calls, we listen to the trainings, we're learning information, and then guess what? The next step to lead, right, is to lead yourself by going out there and applying the information you just learned. And through applying the information you just learned, you just solidified it as personal experience. And now you can go out there and teach other people how to do it. Now, when it comes to leadership development, understand it takes time to develop leaders. Developing leaders is not a microwave. It's not like you just put them in, set a certain time, and boom, they're going to be a leader. Okay. Leadership is more like a crock pot. It's more like a slow cooker. You put them in, and then guess what? You set the timer, and they're naturally going to grow and develop. It's going to take time. Okay. So again, listen, learn, and then lead. Okay. Now, how do you sort for leaders? That's a huge one, right? How do you sort for leaders, right? Leaders, good leaders, have character. Okay. They're honest, right? They're honest. I think that's a huge quality to have, right? They're sincere. They're loyal. They're caring, and more importantly, they're selfless. The greatest leaders put their people ahead of themselves. We shared that earlier, right? And again, the people go, Julian, how do you build such a large organization? How do you build like a cult-like following? And I say, well, and some of you heard me say this on previous calls. I heard this from another mentor, and he shared it with me, and this is what I've embodied. He says, Julian, if you want to build a huge organization, you got to find people that would be willing to cut off their right arm for you. But in return, they have to know that you're willing to cut off both arms for them. That is the dynamic of leadership when they know that you're willing to go harder for them than they will to go for themselves, right? Again, they have to want it more for them than you want it for them, but they know that you're willing to go harder for them than they will themselves. That's kind of like the magic formula, okay? Now, the wrong people lack character. The wrong leaders are selfish. They make decisions prioritizing themselves over their team. They're very dishonest, and sometimes they're dishonest about the littlest things. They care about themselves, and again, I share this over and over again. When you do things only for yourself, that's what you get left with. And more important, they're negative, right? And be careful of negative people. Why? Because, all it takes is one rotten apple to spoil the bunch, okay? So how do you enroll leaders into the vision, okay? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so one of the biggest things in building an organization, developing your influence, is you got to take more than just a business interest in your future leaders. You got to spend time with them, right? You got to get to know them. What are their fears, their doubts, their goals, their dreams, their ambitions? What are their short-term goals? What are their long-term goals? And what is their why? And you got to care about them like family, and you got to treat them like family, right? That's the magic formula. This is relationship marketing. So many people focus more on the marketing than the relationship. Marketing is what gets people in, relationships what keeps people in. Okay? So that is the magic formula. That's why I wanted to share with all of you. So I'm super grateful for every single one of you for joining us on this call, right? It's been such a phenomenal time the past 8 weeks. This call is also going to be available for replay. You can find it on my YouTube. You can also find it on my Facebook. And don't forget to tag anybody that was unable to get into the call today. I know there are some technical difficulties, but above all else, I just want to share that I love and appreciate every single one of you. Every single one of you has something that this world needs. Okay? They don't need another Julian Doan, right? They don't need another Chris Kim, another Karen King. They need the best Colleen. They need the best Shannon. They need the best Yvonne. You have a gift and you're put on this planet for a reason, right? You're here on purpose, with purpose, for purpose. And if you don't know what that is yet, the best advice I can give you is just double down and become the best version of yourself. And that purpose is naturally going to come out. Because I promise you, when this is all said and done, Riemann is going to go down the history books as the biggest, the baddest, and the best. And you get to say that you were there, and you get to say that you were a part of it. So until next time, have a great Sunday, everybody. See you next week, and let's go out there and let's get it.